Well, it's exactly 10 p.m. Time to begin our discussion right here on Ngumbi 2020. But first, I'll introduce my guest who are already seated. Professor Tom Ojenda, constitutional lawyer, David Ochenga, practicing politician, Akisa Wandera, my colleague here, and Eric Ngumbi, who is from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. I'll be speaking to them. We will be speaking to them next. But let's get back to the super screen now, because this is where all the data you need to know for the night begins. And we begin tonight with Article 38 of the Constitution, which guarantees the citizens the right to participate in all political activities, make political choices, form or participate in forming a party of their choice, participate in the activities or recruit party members as they so wish. Also, Article 38 guarantees the citizen can campaign for a political party or a cause of their choice, right to free, fair and regular election for elective public body or office. Note the importance and the emphasis that has been given to that, right to free, fair and regular election for elective public body or office. And it also guarantees an adult citizen the right to vote, register as a voter and vie for any public office. Let's take a look now at the most important definition tonight of a state officer according to Article 260 of the Constitution. And the state officer, which is very important, we are going to center our discussion around state officers. So this means a person holding a state office, and therefore a state officer in the country is a public officer. But not all the public officers in the country are state officers. So every person who holds a public office in the country is effectively a public officer. That's the definition of Article 260 of the Constitution of a state officer. And now let's talk about the qualifications of candidates, because this is what essentially is defined under Article 90 and 99. We'll look at Article 99 too, because there seems to be gray areas that gives them leverage, the politicians once elected, when they fall by the wayside, to come back and run for election. So the legal requirement for a member of parliament, they're very simple. Senate member of parliament, women rep, must be a registered voter, satisfies any educational, moral and ethical requirements. This was a subject of discussion last week in court, and there was a ruling to that effect, is nominated by a political party or is an independent candidate. Express provisions of the Constitution 90 and 99. Legal requirement now for the president and the deputy president. The threshold goes a little higher in this requirement. One, there must be a Kenyan citizen by birth, underline the birth, very important, qualified to stand election as a member of parliament, which we told you earlier, must not owe allegiance to a foreign state. Very express provisions to be a president or deputy president. Must be a registered voter, you must be able to vote, is a holder of a degree from a university recognized in the country, and is nominated by a political party, or the law allows you also to run for president as an independent candidate. And in the last election, 2017, there were 3 independent candidates running for president. Still the legal requirements of a president or a deputy president, same thing, must not be a public officer at that time, must meet the moral and ethical requirements. Chapter 6 of the Constitution, very important, comes to play here, and must not hold dual citizenship at that time. Remember, the first provision must be a Kenyan by birth, and finally must not be undischarged bankrupt, must not be a person of unsound mind, you have to be very sound, must not be subject to a sentence or imprisonment of at least 6 months. Also very express provision. So now we go back to the sticking issues. Having talked about those provisions of the Constitution and Article 38, let's look at the sticking issues, because the sticking issues are the subject of a discussion tonight, centering on Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We'll also look at Chapter 4 of the Constitution, where the Bill of Rights, and try and see if there's any conflicts in these laws. Must not be subject to a sentence of imprisonment of at least 6 months from the date of registration of a candidate or date of election. Very important. Oftenly abused provision of the Constitution. Must not have been found to have abused or misused state or public office or contravened the Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Very, very important to our discourse tonight. Must not have been dismissed or removed from public office for contravening the provisions. Now that clicks in your mind, because there are so many candidates, or so many candidates who are going to go to this election, and some have even been impeached. Yet they'll find a way, some gray areas in law, to run for office. And this, we are going to look at Article 75 which talks about the conduct of state officers, Article 76, which talks about the finances and probity of state officers, Article 77, restriction of activities of state officers, and Article 78, which talks about citizenship and, of course, leadership. Moving on now to application of the law, where Article 6 of the Constitution is concerned. So there are several examples that we can use tonight, but we're going to pick 3 because these were some things that played in the public domain. So Mwende Mwinzi, you remember him, you remember her, she was cleared by the IBC to vie for Mwingi West Member of Parliament in 2017. Now Mwinzi holds a dual citizenship contrary to Chapter 6, Article 78(1). The other one is Ferdinand Waititu. Eventually was impeached in 2020. He was cleared to vie for governor of Nairobi despite 2014 declaration by the High Court, Constitutional Court by the way, declaring him unfit to hold public office. But Ferdinand Waititu was cleared to run for election. Now he also lost his position as the chairman of Athi River Water Board and vied after losing that seat on basis that you will see here, he vied for Kabete Member of Parliament and won in 2018 despite the court ruling. Now, he was impeached from his position as governor of Kiambu, cleared by the registrar of political parties once again to vie for Nairobi gubernatorial by-election as an independent candidate. But remember, that election did not happen. But all the same, he was cleared. What was the loophole, the grey area that Ferdinand Waititu exploited? Wavinya Ndeti is the next. In 2017, she was barred by the IBC from vying as governor for Machakos County on the grounds that she was registered in 2 political parties, a provision that is often abused and misused. Moses Wetangula found guilty of a voter bribery back in 2013, but he vied in 2017. Nevertheless, the IBC had their own reason saying they couldn't find any guilt. Mike Mbuvi Sonko impeached over gross violation of the Constitution, including the Chapter 6 they were talking about tonight. And this is about the successful applications of Chapter 6. This is where it succeeded. Mike Sonko, governor, Ferdinand Waititu, governor, Mohamed Abdi Mohamed was also impeached over gross violation of the Constitution as the County Governments Act, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, and the Public Finance and Management Act. But those were successful, and finally, the Sirisia Member of Parliament, John Waluke, who was convicted over a 313 million maize scandal, and later he was released on bail pending his application. Well, indictments over Chapter 6 of the Constitution, I'll just run through the name. Moses Lenkulal, who was barred from going to office, Ferdinand Waititu, eventually impeached. Abdi Oge, Wajir South, eventually impeached. Mumo Matemo, you remember him, and the Honorable Justice Nancy Bahwa Baraza. Of course, most abuse section of Chapter 6 now, as we end this, Article 75(3), which says a person who has been dismissed or otherwise removed from office for contravention of the provisions specified in Clause 2 of Article 75 is disqualified from holding any other state office. But does it happen? We defined right at the beginning what a state officer is, but does it happen? Members of Parliament, the governors, all of them MCAs are state officers. Now, this is the most abused section of that. A state officer shall behave, whether in public and official life, in private life, or in association with other persons in a manner that avoids conflicts, compromise, and demeaning of the office of the state officer. Very interesting provisions tonight. So we find out the application of the same. Has it worked? Will it ever work? And what is the reason why it doesn't work? Is there some gray areas in law that these candidates have been exploiting, making it possible even after impeachment, removal, even being barred to run for office? Are there provisions that they have been exploiting? Very interesting conversation tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on the round table. And Akisa Wandera, before you begin, just a disclaimer. Professor Tom Ojenda is our teacher. All of us here. Very interesting. So tonight,
everybody but myself.
But yourself, yes. Yes. Everyone here is a student of Tom Ojenda. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. And we have to behave. Akisa.
Yes, and Professor Tom Ojenda, very good to have you here, constitutional lawyer, joining us tonight for this conversation. Eric Ngumbi, who is an assistant director, legal at the EACC. I think we'll need to correct, in charge of ethics development at the EACC. Thank you very much for joining us. And David Ochieng, who's a member of parliament for Ugunja Ugenya constituency.
Yes.
Keep getting those two wrong all the time.
Okay.
But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here. And that's why I pass when I go home. That's the weirdest part. But asanteni sana for being with us here. Ken, you've left it off at a very good point.
Akisa, you missed something. My name is Ngumbi.
Ngumbi, oh,
Yeah,
pleasure.
Ngumbi, yeah.
Pleasure. Asante sana for joining us here.
Thank you.
And my apologies for that
No problem.
mistake there. So then I was picking it up from where you left it off from, on what are these clauses that are being exploited, or loopholes that you talk about that are being exploited by politicians to ensure that we're not successfully enforcing this. And Prof, perhaps you could just take us back there, just break it down for our audience. Why does it seem so hard to implement this?
Thank you, Akisa. Let me start with the basics. The basics are that the leadership and integrity question that is set out under Chapter 6, that runs from Article 73 to 80, is enveloped in certain actions defined under Article 75.3. And those actions reside in mechanisms within specific institutions. Now, when those mechanisms are explicitly set out under the Constitution, it means, therefore, that institutions in government must be working. They must have mechanisms of discipline. For instance, when members of the County Assembly fight in Nairobi, for instance, when a member of Parliament misbehaves in Parliament, when, for instance, an officer in a commission misbehaves, there must be mechanisms within those commissions to take that officer through a process that will find him culpable. Only then, when a finding has been made, can that person to be found to have been in violation of Chapter 6. That's the first point. The second point are mechanisms provided by the Constitution for fair trial processes. And this runs from Article 49.1. Of course, that would be read with Section 123 of the Criminal Procedure Code, but also Article 52 of the Constitution on fair trial. Fair trial mechanisms provide that when a person is brought to court, they will be entitled, 1, to apply for bail, 2, to be accorded a fair process that will either find him guilty through a conviction or acquit him through a process that is fair. Now, that mechanism of fair trial usually is not a plus for those who want to enforce the law, because they find the trial process a big inconvenience. How do we deal with that? Mm-hmm. We need, of course, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, ASECA, provides that trials of a nature of corruption should not go beyond 24 months. Now, if that provision continues to be, and if we don't have adjournments and things like that, court decisions on any anti-corruption matter should be made within 24 months. Otherwise, the delays then that extend or that make these trials elastic then cause concern about non-compliance with these things. I just mentioned those two for the time being. But of course, then, if we go to the other mechanisms, let me just mention, if you go, this is provided for either under Section 62.6 of ASECA, which says that for constitutional office holders, the exclusions, you cannot do anything other than through the Constitution. So that if you look at cases, there are cases that have been determined along this line on 62.6. Then you go to 99. You talk about 99.3, Article 99.3, that says, again, even if, like in the case of Waluke, you are convicted, you still have avenues of review or appeal. So as long as there's a surviving appeal, you have not been found finally to be in violation because there's an appeal or a review of the judgment. So I think as lawyers, we are able to but let me have a disclaimer here. I am lead counsel in about 3 of the cases you have mentioned. And I think we've been successful insofar as the trials are concerned. We've been able to have a good interpretation of the Constitution on some of the cases that you have mentioned. And I think it is good to be here.
It's very important. It's very important.
Professor has just become a lawyer on this table. money to take us through all this. But gentlemen, that is where the problem is. That's where the problem starts. Because it's interesting, there's a provision that needs to be enforced, and yet there's this latitude in several laws that will still see these people back, especially if it's not been exploited to the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is. And that's why tonight we want to talk about how can we then ensure that, despite what Prof is talking about, there is a way that Chapter 6 is applied so that these people who want to run and they have these questions lingering behind them will not run. So before I speak to you, let me speak to a practicing politician. Is there a way, as a lawyer, is there a way? Forget about the Prof is taking us through this. Is there a way?
No, I think what Prof has said is really the law. And I would start from before the beginning. And before the beginning is that they are politicians who made the law. And they made it difficult, almost impossible, to stop them from running in an election. So that history is very important. That you give monkeys a chance to make the law to stop the stealing of maize. It just doesn't work. And so any of these hopes you're having, Mijungu and Akisa, on this issue, I don't want us to belabor the issue. Thomas talked about it. High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, all these avenues. And you want to stop guys from running. It's just not going to happen in our lifetime. We have to get other innovative ways of dealing with integrity issues, if dealing with clean elections, and of dealing with or ensuring that those who offer themselves for elections are actually fit to hold office.
The only way is through a legal framework, because you can't wake up and decide to bar Eric from running just because...
What I'm saying, Mijungu, is this, that if I may be blunt, we'll have to change that law. The current legal framework cannot work for you. It won't just work.
I think we should close the show and go home.
It's that simple because I mean, we can of course discuss the challenges around it, but like I've told you, you know, these issues of integrity are too important to be left to politicians. I have to start at that level. That, for example, if today you want to change the law and say that once you get the first conviction, even if there's an appeal, depending you're bad, which way we have to go? To Parliament. Who will pass it? I mean, Thomas just won a very interesting case yesterday, the day before yesterday.
The Friday one?
Yes.
Yes.
Was
on
it Friday?
Education, yes.
On education?
Yes.
Okay, so we got these guys who are saying that we need some basic level of education. Then there's Tom and his client who is saying, no, these things are inborn, everyone has a right to run, and all this.
Okay. I think it's my clients. I have many degrees. I'm a professor. Just my clients.
No. Actually, when he won the case, he said he won, not the client. So that's why I'm saying Thomas, because he said he won the case. So the issue here is that we are dealing with chicken and egg scenario, Ken. Yet, personally, I don't think that even on integrity issues, the law would not help you, even if you are to tighten it how. This thing will have to get back to Kenyans on elections day.
Eric, I think at this point, this being the institution mandated to largely, oversight and implement this, and listening to Prof and David Ocheng here saying we have to change the law. So where does that leave the EACC? What are we telling Kenyans tonight?
Thank you so much, Akisa and Ken, of course, Professor Mwalimu and Mheshimiwa. I want to begin from where they have left. But for me and the Commission, the beginning point is for us Kenyans to ask ourselves, what is it that Kenyans wanted when they enacted Chapter 6 of the Constitution? What is the purpose of Chapter 6 of the Constitution in our law books? From what Professor cited regarding mechanisms, Article 80 of the Constitution commands Parliament to enact legislation for the effective administration of Chapter 6 of the Constitution to ensure that the integrity that is envisaged therein is realized. So in exercise of that power, Parliament enacted the Leadership and the Integrity Act. The problem we have with the Leadership and the Integrity Act is that it has not provided the kind of mechanisms that are envisaged for the effective administration of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. But I must quickly clarify that this is not to say that all is lost. I must clarify that there are things that can still be done within the law as it is. So the Leadership and the Integrity Act under Section 42 makes public entities the first point of call when it comes to enforcement, so that the Commission comes on board to oversee the implementation of the integrity requirements within the public sector. I will talk about election and public appointments, those two aspects. So because integrity management is a day-to-day activity, we cannot have EACC all over and every day looking at what institutions are doing. So the question is...
Do you even have the capacity?
That is it. So are public institutions doing what they are supposed to do? If, for instance, the Public Finance Management Act makes it a responsibility of every accounting officer to ensure that public funds are prudently used, do you need EACC there? Why can't accounting officers do what they're supposed to do? Okay. Do we have mechanisms to even hold them to account? Do we appraise them? Number two, boards of state agencies, oversight frameworks. When things happen in public institutions and a board later says that we do not know. So the question will always be, where was the board? So we have those mechanisms that ought to do what they're supposed to do to ensure that persons who hold office maintain integrity. Let's come to Chapter 6, Article 73. Article 73 makes the assumption of public office, assumption of public office or state office for this matter, to be guided or based on integrity. So personal integrity is the yardstick for election or appointment to public office. So in respect to public appointments, a lot of work has actually happened. You have seen public interviews. And in fact, the fact that that framework exists, it itself is a deterrent because there are people who would not come forth to offer themselves for office because they know the kind of scrutiny that is expected. Yeah. Mm. So the Commission, in exercise of its powers within Chapter 6 of the Constitution, has continued to make recommendations to recruiting agencies, including Parliament. And we have cases where Parliament has agreed with us and refused to clear people on the basis that they do not have integrity. That is public appointment.
We can count on one hand.
That is one hand. I'm coming to the other one. Okay. In terms of recruitment that is undertaken by public entities, there is a challenge there, a gap in the law, because the recommendations of the Commission are not binding on those entities. We rely on the goodwill of those institutions to implement the recommendations of EACC. We will vet your candidates, your nominees, and we will tell you, this is what Akisa is. Would you want to employ Akisa as this, and that? So it's only an entity that is keen on integrity that will comply with that. And that's why I am saying that implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution will require a multi-agency approach. Everybody doing what they're supposed to do, including Mheshimiwa, ensuring that the laws
who has
effective.
Who has already said these failures, these gray areas are by design.
I'm now coming to what Mheshimiwa was saying, and with due respect, I would disagree with Mheshimiwa that there is nothing that can be done in respect to ensuring that Kenya has electoral integrity, or we inject integrity in the electoral process. From where we sit as EACC, Chapter 6 of the Constitution has inherent ethical threshold, so that it is not every case where one must commit a criminal offense, be taken through the court process, convicted, so that the idea of appealing until you exhaust can ensue. In any case, how practical would that be? We need to ask ourselves very difficult questions.
Give us an example, Eric.
I'm coming to that.
In terms of the examples that we can use, we can see, we can relate to.
Yes.
Give us an example that it ends at EACC and doesn't have to go all the way to...
That is where I'm coming to.
Yes.
An ethical threshold would arise in situations where...
No, someone been bad.
A person...
Yes.
A person... It has not happened, but it can happen if we do things right. Allow me some latitude to clarify this. It's very important. If, for instance, under Article 75, you tell Kenyans that a person must behave in a manner that does not demean the office, for example.
Office, the public office.
do we need issues of crime there? So the problem has been, and you'll allow me to read this because it is very, very important. Let me read 99, which is very, very important. 99 to 8. A person is disqualified if he is found. We mark that word found. We will later come to ask ourselves, found by who? Found in accordance with any law to have misused or abused a state office or a public office, or, and this is very important, in any way contravened Chapter 6. So when you go to Chapter 6 and look at all the requirements there, the codified provisions there, we just need a finding that a person has violated Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Who does the
I'm coming to that. A person has been found to have violated the law. Yeah. For example, if the Senate and the County Assembly impeaches a governor, that person has been found to have contravened the law.
He's going to run to the
court.
But
they're still going to use the courts.
Now that is where we needed to ask ourselves whether we want to see a criminal threshold.
But it's the law is the law.
And then number 2.
No, the law.
Now you see,
It's very important.
that comes to the point that Mheshimiwa made.
My name is David, sir.
Yes, that David.
He has to write the
This is where we lose it.
He made,
No, we're not going to lose it, but we need this clarification.
Yes.
This is the point.
Yes.
That you then must look at the question of the process, because the violation that you talk about, or having been found to violate Chapter 6,
yes,
you fall back to 75(2), that there is a threshold or a provision of due process. One, that you must be subjected to the applicable disciplinary proceedings from the relevant office, and in accordance with the disciplinary proceedings referred to, be dismissed or otherwise removed from office. Somehow there must be a process.
Which is subject to
I agree with you.
Yes.
I agree to that extent.
Then,
But
then
there's a
there's the
clarification
review
that I need to
process,
add.
there's
Yeah.
the review that
Yes.
you can still then appeal.
Yes.
As long as they have appealed against that finding,
Yes,
or have applied for review,
yes,
then they are still eligible. That's
And what we are saying is this.
That's his
Yes.
concern.
It's like what the Bible says. Don't kill.
yes,
So when you kill, we say God will judge you. Simple.
yes.
No one judges you on this earth.
Allow me
we
make this
can't have a
clarification.
law like that, Ken. A law that says that, yes, you should not steal. So then you steal. Then they say,
What
okay,
happens
it's not in our place to judge.
Yeah.
God will judge you. Let him run. It is that stupid.
Okay.
So what we must deal with Akisa, and that's what I wanted to tell my colleague.
Yes.
That, you know, this law that you're reading to us has been with us since now 2 elections. These 2 elections, we had 2 people running in this country for president, having cases, high crimes at ICC. And how did they say? We've not been found guilty. And they ran. And everyone does that every day. And I don't want us to hold our breath on this issue.
The law is the law.
Let's not hold our breath on this issue, so that somebody will be bad from running the next election.
It will not happen.
Through these processes. How?
Allow me to look how.
Okay.
We all acknowledge that there is a problem, because that constitution that provides that one must exhaust all those avenues, and Article 99 and also the 193, it is the same constitution that says that for you to occupy a state office, you must be clean. So we need to look at all that in the context of Chapter 6 of the Constitution, Article 10, and ask the questions such as whether Kenyans intended that a person facing criminal charges in court, or a person accused of stealing what they need safeguarded, should actually hold office. And Ngumbi attempted actually to interpret that. So what I was saying is that there's something that can be done, because there is an apparent contradiction between Articles 99 and 193 on one hand, and the Chapter 6, Article 10, and the 232 on the other hand. And that is why I was saying that there is something that can be done. And what is that?
Amended.
Case law. Case law is part of our law. Our judges have, in the past, interpreted provisions where we have gaps like those ones, and they harmonized the law, and they tell us whether indeed Kenyans intended that people who are not clean would not have. And that is what Mijungu attempted to do.
I can help with the cases,
Yes,
because I did some of them. Now, 3 cases have emerged in the line of the integrity question. I think 3 or 4. I can deal with the Waititu case, the Leno Kulal case, the Mumu Matemu case at the Supreme Court, and of course the Uhuru Kenyatta Ruto case. That's a different ICC matter. But if we start with the Waititu and Leno Kulal, because Leno Kulal was a case determined by the lower court and that went to an appeal to Ngumbi. And that is where Ngumbi defined the question of moral turpitude.
Correct.
And he said that, you see, once you are charged with an offense of safeguarding funds for a county, and before you are proven guilty, there's a threshold that should not allow you to go back to that office. However, even in her ruling, in as much as she reduced the bail terms for Leno Kulal from 100 million to 10 million Kenya shillings, she barred him from accessing office and allowed him to access office on terms. And of course, the Court of Appeal finding that he was not removed from office. So still, Leno Kulal continues to serve.
Yes, he does.
And I think the case is it's in the Supreme Court. You know, it's in the Supreme Court.
With 9 months to go.
With 9 months to go. Now, Waititu is the same. Waititu was before Ngeni Macharia. Initially, before Ngumbi, Chief Magistrate, Ngeni Macharia, the question was the interpretation of Section 33 of the County Government Act, right together Articles 181 and 182, on the removal of a governor, and the question of the terms of bail under 49(1) and 123. The court saying then again, Ngeni making it even more difficult, and saying this is a question of moral turpitude. You cannot go back to office. Completely barred Waititu from office. By the way, the Waititu advanced Leno Kulal. And the Waititu case went to Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. We argued with the Supreme Court the other day. But the argument of the Supreme Court was not limited to whether or not, did not ask the question as to whether or not Waititu was impeached, because it was subsequently impeached. The question that we raised in the Supreme Court is whether bail terms can be made to bar a governor completely from accessing a county. He was just told, go pick your things from the county and go away. Don't get back until the case is over. Ngeni made it tighten the rules. So I think these are the kind of questions that you want to raise. Do we have, can we make the law express on what happens when an individual is charged with corruption, offense of corruption,
that is true,
pending the final determination? But then you must grapple with Article 52 of the Constitution. The presumption of innocence and fair trial. That's the question.
But that before he goes,
that's the question.
You know, Ken and Akisa again, Baba Yao will run next year.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next year. We'll talk
because
about
where we've reached, where we've reached as a country, and that's what the most, dangerous thing, is that you don't see outrage. You don't see Kenyans saying this is wrong, because Ngugi and Wandera are talking about moral turpitude. They're saying that this should appeal to your conscience. This should appeal to your person that, yes, I hold the office of governor. I've been found to have these kind of issues. I should step aside personally. Okay? You're a member of parliament. You've been found to have killed somebody or, did all these things. You still come to serve. So what these are saying is that what our leadership code required was that leaders that we have at least some basic modicum of conscience, which apparently lacks in almost all of them. And I think that's a very important issue here, that this Katiba will only work if we leave it as human beings, as Kenyans. And that's why, for me, the starting point would not even be the Chapter 6. It would be Article 10 that calls upon us to live within the governance principles that we set upon ourselves. Patriotism, integrity, all these things that require us to raise Kenya as a country and be something that we are proud of. No one is doing that. And that's why you'll never hear anybody saying, I resign. Some of them would rather die.
But Ken, there's a delicate point. The delicate balance to strike here is whether or not the cases presented before court are weighty cases or cases that are simply intended to move people out of office. That's the $6 billion question. Do we have proper cases?
But then, Prof, that takes us back to the reason, even before we get there, it takes us to the reason why they were raised. These issues were raised. So it starts from the reasons. Because if you look at most of those questions, and if you look at the defense, even before the Senate, right? It's usually something didn't happen the way they expected. Now they're angry at the governors. As a result of that, they bring all those issues. And that's why impeachment has always been a thorny issue. It's usually difficult.
The issue there
is brought by people who want to themselves be governors.
Exactly.
Yes,
But for me, the issue there is this, again. The issue is about our institutions, their integrity and their strength. Because I always wonder, why would you be talking about political goodwill when you're dealing with EACC or DPP or DCI? The laws allow them what they need to do. In fact,
but they're political appointments.
No,
Appointments.
Ken, they are not. These are what you call, these offices are very well protected, yet the president has to come to parliament and read the list to us and give EACC 20 days to investigate. Under what authority? EACC has simply decided that they will wait for orders from places where the orders are not supposed to come from.
Okay.
The law is clear on what it's supposed to do. They are not supposed to look left or right, even try to imagine what the president is thinking about this issue. But so that the moment, and this responding to what Thomas said, the moment our institutions, the DPP's office, the EACC, the DCI, the moment they allow themselves to whimsically pander to political whims of the day, then we lose it. So for me, at the end of the day, I won't even talk about this thing, Tom, of the reasons. But like I said, let me just make this point here. That the reason, for example, is not Trump being removed. I mean, being impeached. And Pence coming to certify the results, is that institutions work in that country. They don't have to look at anywhere else beyond the Constitution. But our people, everybody in public service, doesn't look at the black letter of the law. They want to wait. What did the president say? What is the minister saying? What is so-and-so saying about this? We'll never move as long as we don't live within what was intended by this constitution.
These very institutions that he talks about, just a minute, the EACC, the DPP, severally have said that there's some form of helplessness just because of these laws you're talking about, that they can't do as much. The DPP Nudin Haji has said that severally, that sometimes you think you have a tight case, but they will still go to court and exhaust the avenues. You cannot bar them for going to office. I've had...
asking for motives to bite.
Exactly. I've had Mbarak from EACC also talk about that. So these very institutions are saying they're helpless.
Akisa, how do you read that situation?
There is something you can do.
We're coming to
you see, if I was the DPP, and have these particular issues around me, I will sit down with the relevant institution and say, we have this evidence. We want these cases to be done within 1 year. The judiciary will allow it. I mean, you've seen cases. I've been a beneficiary. We said in the law, the election petitions must be done within 6 months. Akisa, they are done. Within 6 months, they are done and finished by the High Court. When they go to the Court of Appeal, the same 6 months. I had a petition that went to the High Court. I won it. Court of Appeal won it. Supreme Court, within 12 months, we were done with the court process.
But that's because the Constitution provides for that explicitly.
That's what I'm making here. That Thomas talked about it. Thomas said about 24 months, meaning there's the outer limit. What is difficult in working judiciary to bring the inner limits and say that on this kind of matters, you know, why was it within 6 months? Set a hearing date, there's no adjournment, nothing. If the lawyer is sick, let him bump 2-3 lawyers. So this system is meant to fail from the word go.
It was meant to fail from the
beginning.
Yes. Then we come to you, Eric.
The period. The BBI.
We'll come to you, Eric. Yes.
Which
Remember
BBI?
that.
Which BBI?
BBI had shortened the period.
What is BBI?
What
is BBI?
6 months.
Or in 6 months we should have concluded.
We didn't need BBI to shorten the period.
Yes, exactly. That's the question.
We didn't BBI. Anybody can do
I'm saying
it.
it shortened the period.
But which BBI, Tom?
No, it was there.
And was supposed to be entrained
Let's give
as
Eric,
law.
let's give Eric a chance
there's
to
something we are
respond to some
about to
of those
lose.
issues.
I wanted to say that there is actually a leeway to harmonize Articles 99 and 193. On the other side, Chapter 6, Article 10 and 232. There are several cases that are pending before court. Professor has referred to some of them. I think courts need to expedite resolution of those cases because some of them are asking the court to tell Kenyans what exactly amounts to integrity under Chapter 6 of the Constitution. What is the threshold? Does somebody who is adversely mentioned, let's say, in a parliamentary committee, considered to be in violation? What about somebody who has been found by the Auditor General to have abused public funds in a county government, for instance? What about somebody who has been found by CAJ to have violated the law? So we need that integrity threshold determined. And before I allow Professor, you will recall that sometimes in 2017, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights actually went to court, and all these agencies that are involved in implementation of Chapter 6 were there as interested parties, pleading with the Supreme Court to guide the country on exactly what amounts to integrity under Chapter 6. So once that integrity test has been determined, it will be very easy even for these institutions. The thrust of the case was that the various decisions that have been made by the High Court and the Court of Appeal are inconsistent and incoherent to the extent that today it is not clear what the test for integrity under Chapter 6 is.
Okay.
So there is what I may want to call jurisprudential confusion in that regard.
And whose fault
so
is that?
Courts can help us in this. There are cases that are pending
Whose
before
fault
court.
is that, Eric?
Remember,
Is it the judiciary? Just apportion the blame, it's okay.
we cannot do that because, again, we are also aware that the judiciary has, this capacity,
But when
gaps
you
in
speak
terms
about
of
the
human resource.
jurisprudential
It's only that
confusion, what are you talking about? That's an indictment to the judiciary.
there is jurisprudential confusion in the sense that the decisions that have been made are
By who?
not conclusive.
By who?
By the judiciary.
So you are
But they are
portioning it to the
yet.
judiciary. You are
This is
portioning it to
important.
the
This is
judiciary.
important. They are yet to give us or to harmonize those decisions and
Okay.
give us one clear way forward.
I hear you,
So
and
if
you
that can be
sound
done,
like the moral question is the basis of
Yes.
you. Yes, the moral question,
And I
which we
want
have to run
plead-
away from.
I want to plead with the courts to give us this integrity test before the next elections.
Okay.
And
Well,
secondly, IEBC could also interpret the law. IEBC is a quasi-judicial body that can interpret the law and
No, they'll have to go to court. Can
This
they
is what I'm
really
coming to,
conclusively do it?
And
if KRA determines that you are not qualified for the certificate they give you,
Oh,
you
IEBC
go to court.
can- okay,
IEBC
can do it.
should ask it itself what Kenyans intended when they enacted Chapter 6.
Okay.
Look at all those articles together, but not looking at 99 and 193 in isolation.
Okay, okay.
That would be a constitutional misnomer.
Ken, I think the whimsical application of pretended powers can lead to an invariable application of the law. And that is why the court should settle the question. I agree with Ngumbi on that
Yes,
question.
yes.
But remember, every process, the reports, for instance, the reports from parliamentary committees, from the Public Accounts Committee, PSC and others, would, as of a necessity in terms of what I see under 75, would be subject to processes of those institutions. If you are mentioned by a committee as having done something, you should be processed and a final finding made on whether or not you can hold public office.
Yes. Okay.
I think our institutions are lax. They need to look for some of those reports, deal with them, and then I think we can deal with some of those questions.
Okay.
But I just want to make a few proposals. One, as long as we have the fair trial provisions in the Constitution, and as long as we have Article 99.3 and 75.3 on the question of reviews and appeals, there will always be delays. But the IEBC, we've talked about the IEBC, under Article 88, they have powers to deal with many things, including hearing pre-nomination disputes, post-nomination disputes on questions of integrity. That is the IEBC. They have those powers. When they hear those questions, they can also set thresholds. But again, these thresholds are subject to the High Court, as we have said, and the Court of Appeal. So that
But here, the thing is, let's buy it a bit. Let's see IBC biting a bit. Let's see IBC saying, yes, we know. In fact, we know David Ochieng didn't finish Form 4. Everyone knows it. But Ochieng presents a paper that claims the Form 4 certificate. And he's passed there's no classmates he had in high school. No one, everyone knows that he was herding cattle when people were going to high school. But he presents a paper, says he went to Form 4. We know he's not there. But we
cannot
still
hide in the least legal bottlenecks forever.
This happens in the country. Let me give you okay, let me not mention names here.
Don't mention my clients.
I told you that I did keepers. But that's the point. That you know, we're dealing with a tune where, in fact, there was one case where people are saying only Supreme Court can save this guy. Only Court of Appeal will save this guy. It's so stinking, Ken. Everyone knows it's still high heavens, but somehow they survive.
They survive,
Reason
yes.
is this loophole
The grey areas in law.
You know, the threshold of integrity in this country is so low that anything passes.
You made it so low. You made it as politicians.
No. In fact, by the way, I wanted just to discuss that, if you don't mind, that point.
Can we discuss it next?
If you don't mind, but the issue about politicians making it so low for me, again, is not true because we are a product of a process.
Okay.
We don't just jump into parliament. There are people who voted us in.
Okay. One of the things that when we hosted Samuel Kimeo earlier, he said about this, what you're mentioning, he said, if a young man appears with questionable certificates for a job interview, they will be disqualified. But politicians will be allowed to exhaust all appeal mechanisms. Politicians operate in a context where the law is a wish.
That's true.
You all agree?
There's
only one politician here. Can he respond?
Yes, but I've just said that. Let me tell you, in this country, by the way, it is so true that politicians have been left to play with their own rules. And in fact, the public expects that even if Ochieng were to be found with his hands in the cookie jar, they think Ochieng will somehow wriggle his way out. They know that the laws that apply to the chicken thief will not apply to me. They know it. And they know that they can afford Professor Tom Ojenda with the fees he requires. They know they can afford any other lawyer in the country. I mean, you've seen it. So basically, on this issue, truth be said, that we have failed. The systems that we have failed the country.
Engineered to fail. Prof, I know you want to speak.
Now, I want to just respond to what...
I also want to speak.
I'm waiting for something.
Yeah.
You know, Section 22(1)(c) and D speak to qualifications, the case you said I won last week.
Yes.
Qualifications, degree qualifications for MCAs and members of parliament. Many members of parliament have no degree qualifications. MCAs opted to go to court, and we won the case for them because they're the basic unit of legislation.
That's true.
And I think, of course, part of the argument was that you cannot equate them to members of parliament and to the president and governors who require degrees. I'm waiting for what Parliament will do. Remember MPs, half of the MPs, how many don't have degrees?
No, now it's actually less than 50 actually.
Who
don't have
degrees. I don't know what they are going to do. What I suspect Parliament will do to change the law.
I'll give you an answer on that issue.
Very likely.
Because I run a party too.
They might change the law.
And I agree with you on your argument and even the judgment of the court for this reason. I've been trying to recruit aspirants for the party that I run. And if that law were left to stand, I can assure you that there are some places in this country
you'll never get
that would not have had a single aspirant for MCA. In most places, would have had only one person turning up. So it was going to be a terrible situation if we were to insist on MCAs having degrees.
Eric, I know you want to speak, but Prof, what was the biggest argument that won this case for the MCAs? Because you have been faulted. You saw a lot of comments around that on Friday after the case was won. What is the biggest argument? What is your argument?
The biggest argument is Article 38.
Yes.
The right to exercise, the right to participate in political. But number 2, Article 27, discrimination, because you cannot discriminate on individuals who are otherwise qualified and wish to run for office on the basis of their educational qualifications.
Chapter 4 now?
Yes. No, well, not Chapter 4. Yeah. Educational qualifications, that's 27. Yes,
in discrimination, yes.
And you see 25C, these are inderogable rights. These are rights that you cannot run away from.
Exactly.
And remember, education is an expensive exercise. A degree is not, there's no free university education for everyone.
We have help.
No. Help is a process. There are very many wise individuals in the county assemblies who have not gone to school beyond Form 4. But they're able to push agenda. Remember, MCAs represent not just people at the assembly, but also people at the basic units.
But there's no empirical evidence also that a higher level of education equates to better representation.
Exactly.
We lived it as Kenyans anyway.
We know it. That's the truth.
There are some people who have gone to school but have...
That's the point I'm making, Tom.
You don't
There's no evidence that connects the two. That's the truth.
I think Professor and Mheshimiwa have exhausted the one on academic qualifications. Let me bring another one.
Yes.
On this issue of Chapter 6, there is another critical aspect that we need to look at. That is the role of the citizen. Because we assume that Wanjiku should just sit back and wait for institutions to do their bit. We need to look at the role of Wanjiku in the context of this constitution, which she fought for. This constitution redefined the relationship between the citizen and their government, and it profiled Wanjiku as a very powerful citizen and placed her at the very center of governance. But it appears to me that Wanjiku is yet to take up her responsibilities, including the responsibility to elect men and women of integrity to run our affairs. If you elect thieves today, will you expect them to behave differently? I think no. So citizens should also take it upon themselves to participate proactively in governance processes. Article 1 declares that all sovereign power belongs to the people.
Yeah.
But I hold the view that the citizen will not be sovereign simply because the Constitution has declared that they will be sovereign when they enjoy that status, and that requires a climate of good governance, and that presupposes certain actions by the citizens
the climate
themselves.
is civic education, not good governance. It's civic education. Because how many
much
people
of it?
know that they can he can be recalled? How many citizens, how many voters of David Ucheng know that
And they
he
would
can be recalled?
actually actively participate in that kind of process.
How many of them know? So it's civic
I want to ask you a
education.
question, Ken.
Yes.
I know you can be, let's say, a good governor. You can run a county. How likely are you to be elected if you appear in your county that you want to seek votes from, and you don't bribe anybody? You don't give listening allowance to anybody. How likely are you to be elected? Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. Citizens need to, and to the credit of Mheshimiwa, citizens need to stop making the lives of politicians difficult, because if you make them pay you,
Another wishful thinking, Eric.
if you make them pay you, then
Another
you guess what will
wishful
happen.
thinking.
So we want citizens to be change agents and be part of the change that they want to see.
That is true.
Because this change will not fall from heaven. It is to come from us.
There are two angles to it. The first angle, I would use the academic angle.
Yes.
That, look, the reason we have these institutions like yours is that we believe that the citizenry doesn't have the capacity and the tools to sieve these people. And that's why we want you to sieve us for them as institutions. That's the first angle that we must agree on. That the reason we have this DPP, EACC is to help the citizenry sieve the bad apples or the bad guavas so that they don't even appear on the ballot.
Second angle.
And the second angle is the citizenry. Give us our thief.
Yes.
Even if
us
he's
our-
a thief, give us our thief.
I'm sure I've seen a prof at the Senate House.
I should ask
Something to say on that.
Can
I have something to say.
remember this, just one point. Now, suppose you bar, that's the converse argument. You bar individuals from running for office on the basis of perception and or on the basis of existing cases that they are before court, the case is unconcluded, the prosecution is still looking for evidence. What happens when a year or two, midway the trial, one, the case is either withdrawn,
Okay.
two, there's no witness, or three, they
And
are
you had barred
acquitted.
them.
They are acquitted,
Yes.
and you had barred them.
And Prof, that brings me to my
That's
next
what
question.
we are-
And I've seen some of the questions even on our social media platforms. Is tonight what we are saying here, that it is very difficult to strike the balance between an individual's right to vote, an individual's right to vie, the question of sovereignty, fundamental need to safeguard, public functions and resources. Is it that difficult to strike this balance? Because there's bits and bits of the law. There's been so much legalese here. But what are we telling Kenyans tonight, that we cannot
and
strike
we
that
shall
balance?
at some point reach there.
No, Akisa, in this country, we have a case going on in this country on Chicken Gate. The UK long ago convicted people are serving terms. You know it.
They have actually served.
They have served and even finished.
Yes, they have served.
So
They're out.
this whole thing for me about difficulty in implementation for me, it's just a systemic failure. If
It's about our laws,
if for example,
our
we
laws.
know.
If Moesh was not in parliament today, he'll represent one of those people and he'll have a counter argument to what he's saying.
No. I mean, where
That is what the problem is. That's what the problem is.
Where I see
We need to
today,
address
Ken,
that.
I would have taken a different angle if I wanted to be a politician. But I'm saying what I'm saying because I think, and personally, my heart bleeds. I sit in parliament with 3.9 people, and I probably believe that more than 3/4 of them should not be there. Look, this is not a joke. This issue of allowing thieves, people we know have stolen from us, evidence is all over the place to run, is bad. So the idea that you're going to discuss it and say politicians and all that have different rules worked with, I want to accept. What we must accept and we must deal with as a country, and I hope the people in the judiciary are listening, is that Kenyans are tired of the judiciary holding cases for 5-6 years, allowing thieves to run for elections and win again and again.
You see?
The problem, the issue of striking a balance.
Yes, the balance. Let me address the balance.
The balance of rights, Professor.
Yes, the balance of rights. Number one,
balance of rights.
Parliament. First of all, Parliament. It behoves Parliament to limit the period for trial of cases touching on corruption. Any case on corruption brought to Parliament or any other matter that touches on integrity, I think we should limit the time. Of course, barring fair trial rights, but limit the time. That is a solution.
Yes.
Number two, these institutions that are mentioned under Article 75(2) should work.
Yes.
So that they should implement Public Accounts Committee reports, Committees of Parliament reports, and all these other reports from financial institutions, so that within specific timelines, if you are found to have been indicted or wasted public funds or abused office, should be brought through a mechanism, convicted, and then barred from these processes. So I think the challenge is on whether or not our institutions are up to the task.
Eric, we're coming to you.
Part of preparations, for example, for elections, and you see judiciary always retreating to prepare for the elections, for the election petitions. But for me, part of what they should be doing initially, like now, would be, I would want to see Chief Justice Martha Koome saying, let's retreat to finish the backlog of cases that involve corruption of politicians.
Okay.
So that because those ones are live cases.
Yes.
Let's forget about those who are going to run later. These ones that are here with us, that will be presented to us, and we could count them in your hands.
Yes.
Yeah, there are many. Can we say the Chief Justice says no? If you are judge or gender, we don't want to take any more matters. These matters must be dealt with. No adjournments, nothing. If the DPP is not ready to prosecute, withdraw the cases so that we know this is not going anywhere.
And then the politicians, what they will do once Martha Koome, Chief Justice, makes that declaration, they'll be up in arms and start calling her names.
Assume them.
Also can.
Yes.
Let the DPP and the EACC only bring to court those cases that are threshold.
Yes, the watertight. Yes.
So that things that you think are political, people are playing around games, trying to witch-hunt, block people, leave out those kinds.
Eric, I'm coming to you. Prof, you said one thing. You talked about the institutions. I have a problem with the institutions, and my problem is this. Most of these constitutional offices, look at the way they get into those positions.
Ombudsman?
Ombudsman is good. They are vetted. I'm looking at the institutions such as this, heads of these institutions. They are vetted by Parliament. That's a political decision that is taken there. It's taken to the President for appointment. That's a political decision that is taken there. Once they go there, don't you expect that they will be gatekeepers of this? That's my problem with the institutions you want to work.
Ask me how many times Parliament has rejected a nominee. How many times?
One hand. One hand. One hand.
How many? When?
One hand, two or three.
What you're saying is true, and I want to speak to that if you allow me.
No, but let's speak to Eric. Yes.
I've not spoken for long. Yeah, there is something that Professor has said that indeed we need to strengthen institutions, and we also need to appreciate the environment within which these institutions work. And because we all live in this country, I'm sure you have seen that institutions have tried, and that is why Transparency International corruption indices have actually indicated that Kenya is doing well. We are making progress. That is not to say that we have succeeded. We are not yet there, but good things are happening. In 2018, Kenya was number 144 out of 180. In 2019, we were number 138 out of 180, where 180 is the most corrupt. Last year, we were number 124. So good things are happening, not just in terms of criminal prosecution. There is another thing that is happening in this country. There is a forfeiture of unexplained wealth, a very effective strategy. As we speak now, we have cases before court worth over 26 billion, where the Commission is pursuing unexplained wealth that is in the hands of public officials. There are many other things. Alternative dispute resolution is also working. So we need to complement these mechanisms, strengthen institutions, that is the judiciary, DPP, EACC, DCI, so that they can be able to do better. Then this is very important, Ken and the team. In this issue of Chapter 6, beyond the legal mechanisms that we are talking about, there are other non-legal initiatives that can actually assist. And in mind, I have the role of political parties. When political parties are nominating candidates, why can't they
do the vetting?
Consider Chapter 6? Article 3 talks about every person having an obligation to uphold the Constitution. It doesn't say every EACC officer shall. It is every person. Every person includes Mheshimiwa here, Ken, Akisa, Professor, and Ngumbi, every person. So let political parties also give us clean people. That will make the work of IEBC easier. And that will mean that wananchi will not be given alternatives that are all, not up to the standard that is required.
Ideal one.
If one political party does that,
Yes.
the popular candidate
We'll go to the other one, or an independent candidate.
But the point that he makes that we must support is this.
Yes.
That, you see, what Tom talked about earlier about the due process.
Yes.
It's only the political party that can decide that instead of Oching, we're giving it to Tom, and there's nowhere he will go. Is that simple?
That's also true.
It's the only political party that will decide that
Yes.
on this particular seat,
Will not give it to you.
This is a gentleman in Tanzania who tried to be president so many times. So many times. And Nyerere said about him the first time he ran, kasema kijana mdogo huyu
Atapata.
mali anazo mingi, alipopata hiyo mali hatujui. And he ran and ran so many times.
And has been right.
He never became president. Not that there's anything wrong he did. Not that the Court of Law found him guilty. The CCM just said,
decided no.
chama chetu akinunuliwi.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think at that level, the political parties have a very big role to play in that. But there's an issue that you raised, Ken, that must be dealt with. You see, appointments to positions in this country must go through a process. And we are human beings. So what is required under this constitution is that if Tom is the president, Tom will nominate Akisa to be chair of, say, EACC. Parliament will vet. But you said something earlier that is very important. I think it could be 76 or 77, that when you are assuming office,
Yes.
you ascribe to an oath.
Yeah.
So the allegiance is not the person who proposed to you.
Article 74.
The allegiance is to the Constitution.
Yes.
And that's why anybody who starts telling us that, oh, you know, the way I got this job, or you know, I was supposed to do this way, it's wrong. It's not in the Constitution. So the moment we start living by the Constitution and say, yes, I came here through this process, but once I got in, the guiding principle is this one. And that's why I said earlier that the moment people get in position and they start looking this way and the president didn't give you a job because you're a friend of his. It's because Katiba requires that he must appoint. It's like, for example,
I doubt that comment though. But
I mean, the point is this, Ken.
Yes.
That I doubt it too, even as I make it. But the point that I'm making here is this: that Kenyans must now learn that those jobs given to them are not favors. Those jobs given to them are so that they can. For example, a judge who is appointed, the president appoints judges as a formality. So you cannot tell me the judge will now decide because in favor of the president because the president appointed him. But that's not the way it's intended.
Lawyer Steve Ogola is saying on Twitter that the first problem of enforcement of its is overinvestment in law. That the second problem relates to legal centralism, that is making the law the only legitimate pathway for enforcement of integrity issues, and then misusing the law to frustrate the enforcement. Then he goes ahead to say, to ensure integrity and leadership, we must look beyond the law and into extra legal mechanisms that you've talked about to complement the law. That is social vetting, public disclosure of wealth declarations by candidates, demanding accountability of sources of campaign money. That's another big headache. Declaration of wealth, lifestyle audits.
What Steve is saying, what is new? I think there's nothing new in what it exists. We're not just practicing it.
Except the public finance law. Remember, that is one of the roles of IBC under 88. But it is not possible, it has not been possible to enact the particular legislation limiting expenditure during campaigns because of the timelines, the manner that IBC was supposed to undertake the process has come in too late, and therefore, remember, the committee rejected that.
No, but Tom, that issue, let me tell you, the issue that even in the last parliament, which I was in, IBC had already proposals in 2016.
Proposals?
For the law on campaign financing, they already had them. We just postponed the application. And so what everyone is wondering is, IBC has been with us for the last 5 years.
Why did they take
Why would they decide?
Why
would they decide to gazette this within these 12 months? What do they intend to achieve?
Okay.
But the issue that Ogola raises that is, for me, is very important there is the issue of public vetting. And what has variously been called, I hear politicians calling it lifestyle audit.
Yes.
I mean, you didn't need a law to do that. EACC already has the powers to do that. He's just told us about wealth forfeiture and all these kind of things. So whenever I hear people talking about, we need lifestyle audits, we don't need to ask anybody's permission to do audit of what Ochieng.
It should be continuous, actually.
Yes, and one thing that I think we also need to deal with on this particular matter, and there could be a quick win, that if you were to sift through those forms that we give to you, there's a lot of lies in them. I've not seen anybody being charged for lying, even by indicating that.
Yes, actually there are
those ones could be quick wins because people just feel they mean it's a formality, not knowing that these actually instruments that are made under oath.
Okay, gentlemen, we're running out of time, so you have to speak, Eric. But even as you speak, please propose solutions from where you sit. Don't tell us it's possible. I'll be glad to hear practical things, like amendment to some laws. Legislations are easy to deal with. Forget about the Constitution. Forget about the conflicts. Give us real-world solutions to this.
In order to make Chapter 6 of the Constitution work within the existing frameworks, because we can only operate within the law, a number of things need to be done. One, there are already cases before court asking the court to determine for us what the integrity threshold is. Courts should prioritize these matters at least before the 2022 elections. Number two, we have engaged with the stakeholders, including Parliament and the JLAC, and given proposals that we feel can strengthen the leadership and the Integrity Act, providing mechanisms that will make it more effective for Chapter 6 to be implemented. That is for both the public appointments and elections. One example, EACC always undertakes systems review of public institutions, identifies loopholes, and makes recommendations. We don't want to always rely on the goodwill of those institutions. Let Mheshimiwa and others give us the teeth, or make it mandatory for institutions to implement those reform recommendations.
Okay.
Number three, citizens need to know that they have a stake in this. I always get sick when I see people hating corruption on one hand, but again, loving and glorifying those who are corrupt. So that paradox of unpopular corruption, but popular corrupt persons needs to be addressed. Citizens need to be part of this.
Okay.
Finally, this is very important, Ken. There are many other actors who also need to do certain things for this to work. Professional organizations have a role. It is professionals who scheme corruption. Nobody comes to Kenya when we sleep to scheme these things. It is our people.
Right here.
Professional associations, lawyers, ourselves. I think we need to accept these reporting requirements under the anti-money laundering law. So let professional bodies do their bit, regulate the ethics of members. Let the clergy, religious leaders, let them rebuke corruption from the pulpit. I believe this is one of the obstacles to seeing the kingdom of God. So we need to tell our flock to avoid this.
Whether it deters.
Finally, parents, we are all parents. Let parents also inculcate moral values in our children. Quality parenting is key, because you cannot be stealing and you expect your children to be different. You cannot be bribing for them to get to schools and you expect them to be different.
No.
Let universities and schools also include integrity as part of the curriculum.
All right.
So that we
Fair
don't
enough.
produce people who are so bright but who are without integrity.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get your closing remarks as we wrap up.
One, I don't want to give hope to Kenyans. On this issue, we require revolution. Something like military rule.
Radical march.
where we reimagine the country and we reset the ethos. But having this, guys, the ones that are running for president now operating and telling us they're going to change the country, it's not going anywhere. This requires a person who will come in and just clean the deck. Totally. Kenyans should know and not have hope that any of these running for president is going to give them any solutions. Number two, drastically cut the pay for politicians. Drastically. Give them 40, 100,000, so that Kenyans know that they have no money to give out. Just cut it. Let police be about public service. I mean, the reason people think politicians give them the money is because they think they earn so much. Cut that drastically. Number three, we have commission we set up to help us, leave this constitution. Gender Equality Commission, Human Rights Commission. We've denied them budget as parliament. So, like civic education, this should be done by EACC, this commission, so that Kenyans know their rights under this constitution, and so that they're able to participate and engage what we call civic engagement in an informed manner. We've starved these issues of money so that they're able to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
But finally, on this matter, I just want to urge Kenyans, wherever they are, that if they are hoping that their salvation lies in politicians, then they're in the wrong country.
Okay.
Prof, you get to have the last word on this. Any hope? He's telling us any hope tonight?
Thank you. There is hope. And hope lies in the amendment to the law. And I believe that barring the existence of Article 50 of the Constitution, barring the existence of Article 99(3) on exhausting local processes, and of course, Kenya is a party to the African Convention on against corruption, and the UN UNCANC as well, United Nations Convention Against Corruption. I believe Kenya has the obligation in terms of Article 5 and 6 to implement those conventions and to live up to the spirit. I think what we need here are independent institutions acting independently without interference. An independent judiciary acting quickly to resolve cases before it, an independent EACC, an independent DPP, independent commissions. If these institutions are left to work independently, we will have results. If IBC will truly be independent and will act within what is provided for under Article 88, we will have some improvement in processes. If political parties can embrace the calling under Chapter 6, that would include encouraging free and fair processes that are dependable. If IBC would also conduct free and fair elections, I can tell you that we will be somewhere.
Okay.
But as long as we have interferences here and there, as
We'll
Mwesh
still be running
says,
around
we'll
in
be
circles. Okay, great. And that's a good point to end it here. We've done quite about an hour and 15 minutes. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming here tonight. Professor Tom Ajenda is a constitutional lawyer. Eric Ngumbi is the Ethics Development and Monitoring Charge at the EACC. Asante sana for coming. Good to have you here for the first time here on Kivumbi 2022.
Yes.
Senior, yes.
Yes.
Hey, and all your students are here. My apologies.
We're only 54.
He's the one who taught me professional ethics and integrity.
Yeah.
Yes. You see?
Senior Counsel Tom Ajenda, Constitutional. Thank you very much for joining us here. And finally, practicing politician and member of Parliament Ugenya David Ocheng. Always a pleasure to have you here on the round table here on Kivumbi 2022. Today you're muzzled, your teacher is here. So Ken Mijungu, thank you for joining us here on the show. That's how we wrap it up. Till next Monday, we'll see you. Asanteni sana for joining us and engaging with us on our social media platforms. I am Akisa Wandera. Have a good night.